Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your brand new source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy, and I'm here as always with my dad, Matt. Dad, how you doing?
Doing well. We got rain in California. That was awesome.
Ah, nice. The drought is almost over. The summer, we've almost made it through the summer.
Put out a fire.
Yeah, well, when the first rain comes, it's always good news here in California. It means summer's ending, fire season's starting to wind down, drought's almost over. But we are coming to you here now on a Thursday night, September 22nd, right here after Thursday Night Football, fresh with the love for football flowing through our veins. And we are here tonight to talk to you about the upcoming Packers-Buccaneers game. We do these pre-games every single Thursday night, and we release them on Thursday night. You can listen to them Friday mornings. We also do post-games every Sunday night. We record them Sunday night. You can listen to them Monday morning, unless, of course, we have a Monday Night Football game. Then we'll record those Monday night. But yeah, come check us out. We post about those new podcasts on our Twitter, at FatherSonPacker. Come give us a follow. We would love and appreciate it. You can also check out our YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcast. Come give us a subscribe. We also post all our content on there. You can catch us on any podcast streaming platform of your choice, whether that be Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. We would just love for you to come check out the content that we're putting out because, we enjoy doing this and we think you might enjoy listening to it. But, Dad, do you want to just jump into our pregame?
Ooh, let's say. So I guess we're going to start with the extensive injury report.
Yes. We almost needed to take 2 screenshots to get every single player down in this injury report because it is a doozy. I'm about to do one of those, prescription, medication ad reads where they're reading the, side effects at the end. That's going to be me speed reading through this injury report, and then we'll get into a bit of
reading this injury report could cause wheezing, oozing, nausea.
Side effects may include, but anyway, we're going to breeze through these, and then we're going to do a bit of a deeper dive into what we think the impact of these injuries are, how many we think are that serious. But anyway, here we go. Okay, for the Packers. David Bakhtiari was a limited participant after not practicing on Wednesday. Kenny Clark was a limited participant with a groin issue after not being listed on the injury report Wednesday, so going the wrong way, that's not ideal. Randall Cobb did not participate again for back-to-back days with an illness. Mason Crosby, also listed with an illness after not being listed Wednesday, did not participate. Elton Jenkins, limited back-to-back days Wednesday and Thursday with his knee. It's probably just precautionary. Alan Lazard did not participate with his ankle injury. Mercedes Lewis did not participate, listed with a groin injury, but this is also the day he usually takes his vet rest. Sammy Watkins did not participate with a hamstring, and Christian Watson did not participate with a hamstring after both being limited on Wednesday. And Mercedes Lewis and Alan Lazard were also limited on Wednesday, so made it through that. Packers receiver core is not great right now.
A lot of players going the wrong direction, but just hoping that
Thursday's just the off day. That's the prayer.
Just giving them a rest day, so they're not doing multiple days in a row to rest those. What we're hoping are a few just minor aches and pains.
Yeah, I mean,
and the Bakhtiari thing, there was more people fretting about it yesterday, but it seems with the practice today, there's more of a kind of just the plan.
Yeah, it seems like the plan. I still
day
don't
on,
think,
day off, day on, day off.
I doubt he plays this weekend. But just as a reference, the 2 players that did not participate last week on Thursday were Bakhtiari and Mercedes Lewis. Mercedes Lewis did play. Bakhtiari did not. Mercedes Lewis actually played a lot of snaps. That was a vet rest day, though, so bit tough to tell. But it does seem... Do you want to just break down the Packers injuries first, since there are so many of them, and then we'll move on to the Buccaneers injuries?
Right, so we've got...
Let's talk about the receivers.
4 of their top 5 receivers...
Yeah. It's not great.
All DNP. Cobb has got an illness. We don't know what that is.
Yeah, it seems to be going around because
maybe
Crosby's got one
giving it to Crosby now, too.
But Bisaccia, I did hear, said he believed that Crosby would be good to go on Sunday.
This is true. Bisaccia said he thought, so maybe that means Cobb will be ready to go Sunday, too.
Fingers crossed. If we're kind of inferring that it's the same illness, hopefully they're both back on Sunday if Crosby can.
To read it with rose-colored glasses, we'll hope that the receivers missing today were not actual setbacks, but simply getting an additional day of rest.
Yes.
However, the counterpoint to that is they also re-signed Travis Fulgham to the practice squad after cutting him from the practice squad. And so that makes you wonder, are they worried they're going to need another receiver on Sunday?
It definitely seems like it. I know Tom Silverstein tweeted about this today. But he was saying it was in direct correlation with the receiver absences. And just looking at the nature of some of these injuries, obviously we know Allen Lazard's ankle, like he already missed a game for it, so you hope he didn't take a step back. But I would assume that one is precautionary. The ones that worry me the most are Watkins and...
Hammies?
The hammies, yeah. Are Watkins and Watson.
Are worrisome.
Because hamstrings are long-term injuries. They take a while to heal. They're very fickle. They can come up really quickly.
Especially for sprinting.
Sammy Watkins already had a hamstring injury in the preseason that caused him to miss a bunch of time. And he has a history of hamstring issues. So this kind of like...
Yeah.
It doesn't feel great.
Hamstrings for speed players are troublesome.
Yeah,
so those worry me.
And so, let's say for just worst case scenario, all four receivers like Cobb, Lazard, Watkins, Watson don't play. That leaves us with Dobbs, Winfrey, Amari Rodgers, and
Fulgham,
and
Toure.
Goodness
as wide receivers.
Gracious, that is rough. That would be a Matt LaFleur masterclass if they were able to do anything on
Dobbs season, baby.
It's just, yeah. If that were the case, which obviously worst case scenario, I think Cobb is more likely to play than not. Obviously, don't really have any reasoning for that, but it seems like if those illnesses between Crosby and Cobb are the same, it seems like Cobb's more likely to play. I think Lazard's is probably just maintenance, although I'm a little bit just optimistic there. But if they're missing all four of them, boy, oh boy, is the offense in this game for the Packers going to be kind of ugly and very gimmicky.
Yeah, it's going to be very weirdly run if that turns out to be the case. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I
mean but last year they were missing Adams, Lazard, Cobb, and MVS against the Chiefs.
I think the Cardinals.
Oh, sorry, the Cardinals. The
Cardinals. Yes. Yeah, they were missing Adams, Lazard, MVS. That's right, because they were mostly throwing it to Winfrey and Cobb. And Cobb had a great game that game.
Oh, Cobb had
2 touchdowns, I believe. But no, yeah. Okay, so if they don't have those receivers, it's tough. So that kind of covers the receiver position for the Packers. Offensive line wise, I would not expect Bakhtiari to play. I just don't. I think it's safe to assume he won't play. You should not expect him to play until he does. I think at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunate, but it just kind of is how it is.
Did you watch the video of him playing? Did you see what he was doing?
I saw the very small clip. He was kick sliding, right?
But he was also practicing his look to the right and watch the snap and then jump out of his stance.
So are you saying that that's like as close as you can get to playing, or?
So he's practicing for watching the snap with crowd noise.
Man, you got the rose-colored glasses on like Cyclops. You're not allowed to take those things off, huh? Those things are just on there.
I might burn something.
I might burn something when we lose this game. I might set some stuff on fire. But anyway, that's kind of the injury report for the Packers side. I think Lewis ends up playing. He normally gets his vet rest anyway on Thursdays, and he was limited yesterday.
I'm a little worried about Kenny Clark.
Yeah, popping up on the injury report on a Thursday is never good. And
when he had a groin injury a couple years ago,
he was not as effective for like 5 weeks.
Yeah, and the whole defense wasn't as effective.
Yeah,
while he was hurt. Z and Preston both were down in their production while Kenny was.
That was the 2020 defense, right?
That was the 2020 defense. That wasn't as good as the 2019.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, groin injuries are so tough. Like, you use that muscle to explode.
So I'm just hoping it's really minor. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, getting added on a Thursday is never good. If he doesn't play, do you want lots of TJ Slayton or do you want lots of Devontae Wyatt?
I think TJ Slayton is the nose for as many snaps as he can hold up, and with Reed playing some nose. And then probably the starters would be Lowry, Slayton, and Reed.
Do you think Jonathan Ford is active if Kenny can't go?
That's a good question. Maybe.
because he's been inactive through the first 2 games, but they might not have a choice.
Or elevate Heflin.
I mean, it's possible. Heflin might be more pro-ready right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of how the Packers injury report is going. If Kenny can't play, I think that's a big problem. I think that really
that's a huge problem.
I think that really exacerbates their issues.
Because I think
he
has a chance to seriously wreck
that's what I'm saying.
The Tampa Bay
and we'll talk about that later, but let's move on quick to the Tampa injury report. I'm going to do the same read-off because they have even more injuries than we do. So Carlton Davis is actually back to being a full participant after being a limited participant on Wednesday with a hip injury. He is their number 1 corner, so that's a big issue. Leonard Fournette has been limited the past 2 days with a hamstring. Russell Gage has been limited the past 2 days with a hamstring. Chris Godwin has been limited the past 2, or has been not participating the past 2 days with a hamstring. Don't expect him to play. He injured it pretty badly 2 weeks ago, and I think they're taking it very slow with him. Robert Hainsey with a knee has been limited on Wednesday, but is now a full participant. Akeem Hicks did not participate. He is not expected to play. He has a pretty serious foot injury that should take him out. That's probably going to unfortunately take him out.
Last I heard was a month for the torn fascia.
Yeah, Julio has a knee issue, and he has been a DNP the past 2 weeks. That's tough to see. Zion McCullum, corner, hamstring, has been a full participant both days, so he's probably fine. Scotty Miller with the calf injury has been a limit on Wednesday, but is now a full participant on Thursday, so he's trending in the right direction. K. Dotton, their rookie tight end, for personal reasons, did not participate the past 2 days. Brashad Perryman, their wide receiver, with a knee injury, has been limited the past 2 days. And then Donovan Smith, their tackle, was a DNP on Wednesday, but has been upgraded to a limited participant on Thursday with an elbow injury. That's a pretty big deal because he is their starting left tackle.
So he was
also,
out there
just one last thing
today with an elbow brace.
Yeah, but one last thing. Mike Evans has been officially suspended for this game after fighting Marshawn Lattimore last week.
So Evans is also out. His suspension was held up.
They also don't really have any receivers. Their top 2 stars, Godwin and Mike Evans, will not be playing. Russell Gage is looking pretty iffy to play.
I thought that Gage was looking more likely. That they thought that Gage, Perriman, and Scotty Miller were looking a little bit more likely to play.
Okay, I had not seen that. I had seen fantasy analysts saying they did not expect Gage to play, but it definitely could go both ways.
That. I was still thinking there was an outside chance that Julio would play and less chance for Godwin.
Well, the fact that Julio has not practiced yet this week, I mean, Julio never practices.
Oh, I'm not saying
to be fair, Julio never practices anymore.
I'm not saying it's necessarily likely. However,
yes,
he's got more of a chance than Godwin.
Oh, yes. I mean, Godwin and Evans are not playing. They're not playing this week. I think he's already been ruled out pretty much, and all but official. But I think that, this game is going to be a bit of a slugfest. I think it's going to be a defensive battle in the end because looking at all these injuries, it's rough out there. I think the biggest one to keep an eye on if you're a Packer fan is Donovan Smith. I think all the other ones are pretty set in stone. But if they are out their backup left tackle, I think their second string left tackle is also injured.
So something that's not mentioned here in the injury report is their backup tackle, who is already filling in for their injured first string tackle, Josh Wells, has gone to IR.
That's a good catch. That's tough.
What the heck was his injury? Calf?
Well, either way, he's on IR.
And Gio Bernard. And Gio Bernard also went to IR.
But if Donovan Smith can't play, it's going to be their third stringer, which is probably why they're trying to get him back out there with the brace.
Yeah, so we'll see what's going on with Smith with the elbow brace, whether he's able to play. And then, so kind of in parallel to the Packers re-signing Travis Fulgham to the practice squad,
Cole Beasley.
The Bucs have signed Cole Beasley, famous rapper Cole Beasley.
Is he a famous rapper?
Yeah,
does he have a rap album?
I think he might actually have an album.
I did not know that. Huh.
You didn't know that he rapped? I think I've got that right.
I did not know that. That is news to me. But anyway, those are the injury reports for both teams. We're going to now go on
Beasley
to
rap album. Yeah.
It's weird that you know that. I'm just going to say that.
They must have been mentioned in the game once or twice.
Sure they did. Definitely.
Don't look at my playlist.
But anyway, going down to...
I'm not going to give that knucklehead a listen.
We're going on. But anyway, going on to our official game preview now. We always like to start with one segment called Blast from the Past, which is a bit of looking back at how these teams have matched up
Pain?
in the past. Pain, yes. In this case, pain. How these teams have matched up in the past, and then also what each team has been up to most recently. So we're going to start with how these teams have matched up in the past. And Dad, these matchups gave me depression, so I'm going to let you take the wheel from here on this one because I don't want to hear about these games.
Well, we could turn off your headphones.
You're muted. I don't even hear you anymore. Go ahead.
So the last two times that the Packers lost both games in 2020, the first of the regular season, they lost badly. They actually scored first, but then Rodgers threw like the rare pick six, and the whole game kind of fell apart. They had a ton of trouble on offense moving the ball, and everything going on. It's one of those like kind of weird sort of Packers in Florida for Rodgers things that happened in that game, and all kinds of stuff fell apart. And then, of course, the most painful of all was the loss in the NFC Championship game, and that was one where they really struggled to run the ball, and Rodgers was under a ton of pressure from their two edge rushers while they had Billy Turner and Wagner.
Yeah.
Starting at the tackles, and they really struggled to hold up. Though I think even the interior of the line was not so great either. And it was one of those things where we just had lost Bakhtiari, and our whole offensive line went down. And they had just gotten Vita Vea back, who was originally thought to be like out for the season with a ankle injury, and came back just in time for the playoffs. So we were struggling.
I've had enough of this. We got curb stomped. We got absolutely curb stomped. We got absolutely curb stomped by these fools. We
lost by one score with like 8 things that went wrong in that game.
If you look at who's to blame for when things go wrong, like things, yeah, that's football. It's your fault. It was the Packers' fault that things went wrong.
What I mean is they were competitive.
It was a 2-score game with like 5 minutes left, and they did nothing on offense in the like key moments. They had a chance because Tom Brady threw 3 picks because Tom Brady is overrated, but.
Yeah.
Tom Brady gave them a chance to win that game, but I don't think they really...
But they couldn't get enough protection to do something with those possessions. But that game turned on the interception and touchdown just before half, and then the Jones fumble just after half.
That turn of the half was an absolute nightmare. That game sucked. I hated that game.
But anyway,
so
enough
much.
of that game.
Yes. But anyway, that's the blast from the past. Very fun, happy memories over here on this side of the mic. But we are also looking at most recently what these teams have been up to, and specifically what's going on in Bucs world. Kind of narratively what's going on with them, and then what happened most recently in their most recent game. So for the Buccaneers over the offseason, they have actually kind of had a lot of newsworthy items going on. Bruce Arians retired as coach, kind of moved to a bit of a front office position, with their defensive coordinator Todd Bowles becoming the head coach. Very good DC, previously been the head coach for the Jets. Hadn't gone that well there, but it's the Jets.
It was the Jets.
So
when you have that kind of ownership, it's very hard.
It was
for
an
organizational
mess. But Todd Bowles is now their head coach. A big piece of news over the offseason, in case you somehow missed it, we're living under a rock, but Tom Brady retired and then unretired, and has since been missed a lot of training camp for personal reasons. That's fine.
Yeah.
And also is not practicing on Wednesdays anymore. But that does lead you to believe that possibly they could be open to a bit of a slow start, although they are 2-0 to start the year. And this game is in Tampa, just so you know. We forgot to mention that.
So if you had been in Peru practicing your tea ceremonies, if you haven't been doing that, then you've heard this news already.
Exactly. Rodgers probably didn't know about this until he showed up to training. He was like, Brady retired, but he's still playing? Man, did you look at that? But anyway, so that's also what's going on with them. The other bit of unfortunate news for them, we've already talked a little bit about their O-line injuries, but man, they have been getting smacked by injuries along the O-line. Their star center, Ryan Jensen, unfortunately had what is thought to be, if it's not season ending, he's coming back in like the last week in the playoffs. Very serious injury in training camp. And then one of their guards, who was, I guess, battling for a starting guard spot, what was his name? Sorry. Aaron Stinney. Was competing for that left guard spot and was probably in line to win it, but he also got a season-ending injury and was forced to put on IR. So both those guys out for the year. along with, like we already mentioned, some O-line injuries. That's kind of been the story of camp for them, is their O-line, and particularly the middle of that O-line, getting kind of decimated.
Right. In a lot of ways, this Bucs team is very different from that one 2 years ago.
Yes,
where their offensive line was stellar.
Dominant offensive line 2 years ago.
And now it is not.
Well, we'll see. Because most recently,
not so far, anyway.
The Buccaneers beat the Saints last week 20-10 to move to 2-0. They're one of the few undefeated teams in the league so far. They finally beat the Saints in a regular season game under Brady. They had not beaten them in the regular season. They had obviously beaten them in the playoffs once. Winston really struggled in that game, but he's kind of injured right now, so it's a bit of hard to tell. Threw 3 picks on 3 straight possessions, which is kind of the Jameis Winston special.
I guess say Jameis pulled a Jameis in that second half when it was a tight game.
And to be fair, both teams were missing a lot of players, including Kamara, Godwin, and Julio all not playing. But it was a very low-scoring game. This game was ugly. It was 3-3 after 3 quarters, a field goal each, and it makes you think maybe it'll be even like this game versus the Packers, and Tampa might be even less high-scoring than with even more weapons missing. So smash the under if you're a gambling man or a gambling woman.
Yep, it was kind of that game was kind of a mess. But I was rewatching a little bit of it, and the Saints were actually able to run against Tampa at the beginning of that game, and that was while they still had Vea and Hicks both out there before Hicks got hurt.
And Kamara and Jones are stylistically kind of similar.
Right, and they didn't have Kamara. It was Mark Ingram who was actually running well against them.
That's a good point. They did not have Kamara. Game. Totally just said that. But yeah, so that's kind of what we're looking at for what the Buccaneers have been up to. I think it's always important to kind of take a look at your opponent and see what their storyline is going and how they've been performing recently. But they're definitely a tough matchup. I mean, they're undefeated.
Their defense has been nasty.
Defense is disgusting. They've played the Cowboys and the Saints' offense is actually not so bad. But yes, the Buccaneers' defense is very good. Todd Bowles always dials it up. He's a very aggressive defensive coordinator.
And they've been, first or near the top in a number of different defensive stats.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like we're moving into some stuff we wanted to talk about. But, Dad, like we do every week, what makes the Buccaneers a tough matchup?
All right, so I'll go. And one thing is, we figure you guys know what the Packers have been up to recently, which was
beating the Bears, as always. Is the sky still blue?
As Packers owners, it's a good
question.
Does that mean
I know where you're going.
Own some of the Bears?
I'd rather not.
I'm pretty sure they're the Packers and the Packers are the Bears.
They're in massive debt. I don't think I want the Bears.
The Bucs matchup. I'll talk about what I was thinking makes the Bucs a tough matchup, and the main thing is their defense that we just talked about. So, from Football Outsiders, they're number 2 by DVOA overall, number 1 against the pass, but only number 15 against the run, which is a big difference from what they were 2 years ago, where they were, in 2020 they were 5th overall, 5th against the pass, and 1st against the run. So it's a different flip there that they're not so far. I mean, it's a small with only 2 games. Things might settle out, but they've been a little softer against the run. But they're first in points. So then by kind of traditional stats, they're first in points allowed, first in sacks, tied for 3rd in takeaways, 5th in yards against.
I mean, and just to preface all this is only over a 2-game sample size, so small sample size.
Small sample. It's all small sample size. Yeah.
I am not convinced that their run defense is middle of the pack. I am not convinced of that. I think they're going to be still very tough.
Just a blip of small sample size. But Tampa and Green Bay are tied actually for second in third down conversion percentage against. So that's actually something that the Packers have also been good at. And drives and points per drive, Tampa Bay is first, and the Packers are 14th.
Yeah, I mean, the defense is, I think, the highlight of, especially with all the weapons being out. I mean, obviously, you guys know Tom Brady, you know these weapons, but a lot of them won't be there, so I think the offense will be a bit more difficult, won't come quite as easily for them, especially with O-line injuries as well. They have that's a tough setup, but we'll see. We might still struggle. But I think that the run defense is still something that scares me, just because I know they don't have Akeem Hicks and they don't have Ndamukong Suh, who they had the past 2 years. But they still got Vita Vea. They still got for those inside runs, who's, in my mind, the best run stopper in the league. They still have Levante David and Devin White scraping sideline to sideline, who really, really give the Packers problems. They cannot get out on those guys to block them on the second level. Those guys are somehow never blocked and always smacking the Packers running backs in the backfield. And
I heard somebody say that, and I can't remember who it was now, that perhaps the zone blocking scheme,
they're running a lot of pin and pull right now. They're running
right.
a lot of power right now.
So the change in the blocking scheme they're doing this year, maybe that'll change that narrative a little bit. Maybe the wide zone blocking scheme
was not conducive to beating this type of defense.
Not as effective a strategy against their strengths.
Well, I know Justice Mosqueda was on Mina Kimes' show. I think it was today or yesterday. Check out that podcast. It is one of my favorite football podcasts. But he was talking about the Packers and about how Packers are running a lot of pin and pull run scheme as opposed to the wide zone they had favored previously. And he was talking about how with that kind of running attack, it's a lot of boom or bust running plays. Like either you get smacked in the backfield as the guys are pulling, or you break it big. And so maybe they'll be able to break a couple big ones, because I don't think this is going to be a very high scoring game. And I think if they're going to win, I think they just need to hit on a couple of these big plays. But I think since we're still focusing on what makes Tampa a tough matchup, and less so what the Packers can do to beat them, I think that just specifically this young O-line has a lot of, like, they're going to have a lot to work with and a lot of challenges coming in this game, because Myers and that interior are going to have to deal with Vea. He is probably the first like elite. He's borderline elite. I don't know if he's fully elite, but borderline elite defensive tackle that they've played this year. And then the tackles are also going to have a really tough time, because per Pro Football Reference, Shaq Barrett, their edge rusher, is leading the league in pressures this year already. And that guy's a super elite pass rusher. And I think it's going to be tough, because, Elton Jenkins coming back from injury is not quite, I think it's fair to say he's not quite 100% yet, at least skill wise.
No, most people actually, it takes a while after they come back and play before they're back to their normal level. And so we hope that will happen by the end of the year. But I hope some of it is just going to be rust, where he got better as the game went on last week. But one thing I'd say, you talk about the Packers, their run blocking overall has been pretty good. Better, rated better by Football Outsiders than Tampa Bay's.
I mean, we'll get to that. We'll get to that a little bit when we talk about how Green Bay is going to take advantage of Tampa. But I do think that we should first talk about how we talked a little bit about how Tampa presents a difficult matchup. I think we should talk a little bit about how Tampa might approach this game, because I think, like we say every week, it's important to look at the opponent closely. How do we think that they're going to try and exploit the Packers' weaknesses?
Yeah, so are we ready? So one thing I was going to talk about how the Packers might how the Bucs will exploit the Packers is on defense, and this has been the strategy before, commit to stop the run and try to make Green Bay one-dimensional.
The Packers struggle so much when teams do that to them. They struggle so much when they can't run against teams.
Right, under LaFleur, when they can't run, then the whole offense kind of falls apart. And that was the problem they had 2 years ago against Tampa both times. The problem they've had against the Niners, in the games they struggled there.
Yeah, screw you nerds. It's all about the run. It's all about the running game, nerds. You don't know football. You don't know ball. Silly.
So that is one possible way for how the Bucs will try. Another thing then on offense, I was saying look for the Bucs to try to challenge Green Bay's defense by riding Fournette, possibly until the wheels come off, with all of the receivers out, both in the passing game and the running game.
Mm-hmm. And I think we can talk about that now, since we're talking about the passing and the running game. One of my things that I was interested to see, what I was keeping my eye out for, was a lot of targets for Fournette, I think, are coming, because not only does Brady already heavily target his running backs, they've done a lot of studies specifically for fantasy football that show that when receiver targets are vacated, so when receivers aren't playing, receivers move to a new team, etc., a lot of those targets are usually actually taken by the running backs, not by the receivers replacing them. And we can kind of see that in our own offense with what we're seeing with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon getting a lot of targets each game. And I think an interesting stat, just to talk a little bit about how I know we were kind of talking about Tampa, but just to touch on the Packers a little bit and the receiving game for the running backs that they faced. In 2020, when the Packers last played Tampa, the Packers allowed 47.75 receiving yards per game to the running back position, according to StatMuse. But last year, they allowed an average of just 32.8 receiving yards to the running back position, also per StatMuse. And so I think it's interesting because, yes, some of that is Joe Barry, but I think a lot of that has to do with the addition of Devondre Campbell. And so you could talk yourself into the idea that, hey, they added Campbell, they improved the linebacker position, they should handle receiving by the running backs better. And then they improved the linebacker position even more this year with the addition of Quay Walker. Will they be even better against passes to running backs this year and maybe be able to neutralize some of the work that Fournette's going to get? That was kind of what I was looking at for this game, and I was going to talk about later. But since you brought up specifically receiving for the running backs, what do you think about that?
It's an interesting idea, actually, in that we could have, with two running backs able to...
Linebackers
able to cover running backs, that we could be even better this time around. And early on, so far this year, they rank 12th in covering running backs catching as a pass catchers.
By yards, or
this is by DVOA?
By DVOA, okay.
And Football Outsiders.
Cool.
Where they break down the passing by types of receivers.
Okay. But I mean, so decent so far. And they have had to play against Cook, who's a decent receiver, and Montgomery is okay. But so that's kind of something that I also think that Tampa's going to try and do. I think Fournette's in for a big day. Something that I'm looking for Tampa to do is, when there's a weak link on the offensive line, it does not take long for the other team to find it usually. And so I would not be surprised if they chose to blitz either their two linebackers, White and Levante David. I know that Mina Kimes on her show, to reference again, when previewing this game, did say that Todd Bowles is not blitzing quite as much this year as he has in the past. Normally he's very famous for being a very blitz-heavy coordinator. He's not blitzing quite as much this year. But I would expect some heavy A-gap blitzes, making Newman think, because Newman has trouble picking up blitzes and stunts. And I think that's going to be a very heavy dose of that going into this game.
Could be a lot of stunts in this game.
Especially that right side of the line. With not having played together much and Newman already struggling with stunts, I think that's going to be something that Tampa's definitely going to try and exploit. But that's kind of how we think that Tampa's going to try and exploit us. But hey, we're not practice dummies. We got some decent players too. What are we going to do against Tampa, Dad? What are we going to try and exploit?
Right. So one thing I think the Packers will do, which is sort of like a long-held strategy against Brady because he's not a mobile quarterback, is to...
Really? This 45-year-old can't move in the pocket anymore? Ever?
Is that pressure up the middle, which makes Kenny so important and this injury to him so worrisome, but that they'll try to disrupt the Tampa Bay offense with pressure up the middle and force bad throws or quick throwaways from Brady, who will chuck it into the dirt very quickly if there's pressure at his feet.
Mr. Checkdown.
Or he'll throw it up for grabs and give you a few interceptions every once in a while. The other thing,
the ball goes up and the Microsoft Surface tablet goes down.
Yes, apparently Brady and Rodgers are talking about who's going to cause more damage to the Microsoft tablet during the game.
Microsoft sponsor us. But anyway, continue.
And the other things I'm thinking about is that how good will Green Bay be able to defend the run against the Tampa depleted O-line.
Yeah.
And that and that's in contrast to and one thing I don't have to look up is whether that Tampa offensive line is more likely to kind of where they're weaker is getting stuffed at the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. And actually that is the case. They're not doing so well at keeping down the percentage of runs that get stuffed. Mm-hmm. And their downfield blocking is so-so.
And so it seems like it's going to be important to win those early downs.
Yeah, and that's something the Packers run block is actually pretty good at, is the downfield blocking. And you see that actually with like Myers and Nyman.
Myers was looking really good in space
running downfield. They've been very good getting to the second level blocking, and I feel like Myers has been doing a better job of that than he has been holding
regular
up
blocking. Yes,
in the line.
Then zone blocking, because they ran a zone play and Dylan got absolutely stuffed in the backfield because I forget his name, but one of the D tackles for the Bears just went right upfield and Myers didn't touch him. And I was like, ooh, we talked about it a bit on the post game last game, which is still up on streaming platforms. If you guys want to hear about how we talked about the Bears and maybe think about how that applies to this game, check it out. But like you're saying, Myers has been a lot better in space than he has been just on the line and playing and doing zone and stuff like that.
Yep. How about you? You got stuff you wanted to see where the Packers might exploit the Bucs?
I think I would like to see, with a depleted secondary for the Buccaneers, I know there is some risk to this, but with their best weapon clearly being Fournette for this game, I would like to see the Packers put some more people around the box and kind of rely on the studs they have in their secondary to take away this depleted receiver core, because I think that, honestly, they should allocate more resources to stopping Fournette unless they're really getting picked apart by Brady. Brady is also very good against zone, so that's not great. I would like us to not play zone. I would like us to play man. I know we're not going to, but a boy can dream. And I would like us to blitz Quay Walker a little bit along the interior. I think that the fact that they're starting a lot of backups in that interior line, Quay Walker's kind of size, speed profile, his strength profile, make for him to be a good blitzer. I know Ben Fennell on Twitter is very good football analyst, very good X's and O's guy. Really wants to see Quay Walker blitz a lot more. But, up to now, according to Bill Huber, Joe Barry has not blitzed one time through 2 games. And so I think, will that continue? Probably. It is always hard to blitz a veteran quarterback. But I would like to see them make Brady think and pressure him, because they did not pressure him at all in 2020. And that was another big reason that they lost, is the D-line could not get a win.
Until the second half of that game, then Gary was starting to get after him.
But I think the D-line in general needs to have a good game, and I think Kenny needs to play, unless he's like hurt, and then don't take it easy, Kenny. We understand. But if Kenny plays, he needs to play well. The D-line needs to play well, because these are mostly backups. If Donovan Smith is not playing, Preston or Gary, who's ever on that side, needs to step up. I feel it's like they're going to run a lot to the right side with Tristan Wirfs over there, who's their better tackle. Gary needs to keep contained and not get washed out of those plays and not get too far upfield. The D-line essentially needs to be the focal point of the defense this game, and maybe give them a little extra help up front, because the receivers are not that good. I don't know. Famous last words, but they're not anyone that you need to give extra attention to. And man-to-man, the Packers' corners are each individually substantially better than the Tampa Bay receivers, and I think they should play defense accordingly.
Yeah. One thing that's kind of interesting is that your sort of how can the Packers exploit the Bucs kind of feeds right into one of my things to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, let's talk about our things to keep an eye out for.
And so I'll go on. I'll go to that first. So one of the things I was putting to keep an eye out for is like to watch to see if Green Bay employs man defense against the depleted wide receiver core. Because in addition to that, it's also you don't have to worry about Brady breaking out of the pocket and running for 40 yards.
Yes,
and I know if you have your back to the quarterback is a problem if you have a running quarterback.
And I know a lot of people are like, oh, like Pettin was here and we played man and everyone wanted like to play zone, and now Barry's here and we're playing zone and everyone wants to play man. I'm not one of those people who's just calling for man every single game. This feels like a game where you can play man. This feels like a game where you can play man.
Yeah, as opposed to last game, I felt like zone had some advantages to keep an eye, or at least somebody, and they did do the spy thing that we were talking about for Walker to watch Fields as a running quarterback. You don't have to sacrifice a cover player to have a spy on Brady. And so I think you can commit to rushing
I would love to see one of those, and I would love to see one of those
man.
linebackers matched up on Fournette. Like just trailing him. Because Brady loves to dump the ball off, like we were talking about earlier.
He does. Playoff Lenny was just a check down target.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing pretty well with those. I thought he was washed.
No, but it just meant he was a target hog.
He gets a lot of targets, and vacated targets go to the running back. But yeah, that's definitely something I'm keeping my eye out for.
So that's one thing that should we switch back and forth? You want to mention one of the things that you keep an eye out for, and then I'll go back to one of my other ones?
Yeah, I think I'm going to steal one of yours. But Tampa Bay is the number one defense by DVOA against running backs as pass catchers. That's a little frightening.
I got to change my list now.
And it makes sense though,
because
I used mine earlier because we were talking about running backs as pass catchers, so I had to steal one of yours. I'm not ashamed. You can't prove it.
It's right there.
I had that thought originally. But like I was saying, it kind of makes sense when you think about their personnel, given that Levante David is eternally underrated and Devin White is a freak show. They're going to be able to run with these running backs out of the backfield and stay in like a heavier personnel still, which is kind of what the Packers are trying to do with Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker. But it makes it difficult on throwing the ball to running backs, and that's kind of all of the Packers' offense, especially if these receivers don't play. So, I mean, what do you think is going to happen there? Because that's kind of scary.
Yeah, that's something. It's definitely something to watch and hard to predict at this point.
Yeah.
Who's going to win out? Something to keep an eye out for. Another thing that so I'll switch to what I think I wanted to talk. Another one I wanted to talk about was the where's Green Bay going to try to run? And this is actually something that you mentioned earlier on that I could call back to. You know, whether they're going to do like power runs up the middle where Vita Vea is sitting,
waiting,
350 pounds,
menacingly.
But there's no Akeem Hicks.
It's true.
So before they had both of them in there, or will they try the speed outside runs where Levante David and Devin White are both sideline to sideline. So both of those strategies have downsides. So they can, So one thing, will they be able to like influence the linebackers with play action, get them to react and out of position, because they'll be ready to chase after the running back. So see what happens with that.
And it's tough though because we did talk about Josh Myers like playing very well, getting out in space. But there is a difference in getting out in space on the Bears linebackers and getting out in space and trying to block Levante David and Devin White, who are so freaking fast. And like Roquan Smith's a good player. I don't think he's as good as either of those guys.
He's not as good as either one, I think. But one thing is that the Green Bay I would mention is like 6th in offense overall right now, but 4th in running offense. So we'll see.
Yeah,
what comes out of that.
It's just so tough because kind of all of the things that the Packers are good at, Tampa is good at stopping. It's a really bad matchup for the Packers, honestly. Like it's a tough matchup, and I think those are the things that I'm keeping my eyes on. And just one last thing is the special teams has not been bad for the Packers so far. They're right about middle of the road. They are 14th by DVOA, and they were dead last year. Tampa Bay is 20th. So this might be the first game of the year Packers have a special teams edge in. So I'm going to say.
I would say overall, I've been quite pleased with their coverage and their gunners. Been doing the job so far. So
yeah, shout out Keyshawn Nixon and Ford.
And Rudy Ford, yeah. They've been doing a good job. And Dallin Levitt with the tackling on kickoff returns. I
mean, they've been, as advertised, like they brought these guys for special teams. They've been good on special teams. Check. That's a W for me. Shout out Bisaccia. Let's hope they can keep it up. Packers special teams haven't been good in a very, very, very long time. But that's kind of all the things that I'm looking out for. Do you have anything else that
Well, I
you're
think there's
keeping your eye
one
out
more
for?
thing that you've got on your list that we haven't brought up yet, and that's though we touched on it a little bit, is how Elton is going to look
in his second game back.
In his second game back, is he going to start look? Is it going to be a gradual improvement for every game now as he gets his feet under him?
He's coming back, and it did seem like Roquan Smith mostly stuck to Josh Nijman's side last game, so mostly Elton had to work against. I guess Roquan did get him
Robert
one time.
Quinn?
Robert Quinn, sorry. Yes, Robert Quinn. Mostly worked on Josh's side, it seemed like, although he was on Elton's a few times, I think, if I remember correctly. But Elton definitely, I think, has a higher level of competition this game. Robert Quinn's a very good player, but Shaq Barrett is one of the best pass rushers in this league that doesn't get talked about. And then their second-year player, I think Joe Tryon Shoyenka, sorry, bit of a tongue twister, was a first-round pick a couple years ago and is super athletic, and they are really high on him. So they have some pretty good edge rushers. And I think, Elton's second game back, thankfully it's not his first game back, that's going to be tough. And I think it's something because I know we don't really want to talk about this, but Rodgers has been getting obliterated like 2 to 3 times a game by some of these edge rushers, just like whooping the tackles.
He has been nailed a couple of times.
He's not going to be able to keep taking those hits all season. They need to figure it out.
Yep, he's got to just throw the ball away quick.
Some of the times there's no time.
There have been 2 or 3 that he didn't even have time to do that because beat so bad. But we're hoping that with Jake Hansen now as a backup, that it's going to be less of a problem.
Yeah, Josh kind of struggled last week, so I'm hoping he can bounce back.
But yeah, he has been above average tackle, but not
Josh,
up to the...
Josh, in terms of like range of outcomes, this is like a super high level range of outcomes. He could be a starting tackle in this league. I firmly believe that. But he definitely I think he had one of his not as good games last week. I think that's fair to say. But anyway, that's kind of our general thoughts, our preview for the game. And the last thing we got to wrap it all up is score predictions. Dad, do you want to go first or should I go? I'll go first because I'm a bit of a Debbie Downer. And then we can end on a high note. But I actually have Tampa Bay winning this 24-10. My reasons for it: Packers aren't going to have any receivers. All they can do is run and throw to the running backs. That's what Tampa's best at stopping. It's in Florida. Packers are terrible in Florida. And I just don't think they're going to be able to score on Tampa. It's one thing to score on the Chicago defense, but this is another animal. And I think maybe if this game was in week 15, they'd have a better chance. But week 3 with no receivers, I know Tampa's super banged up too, but I think Tampa wins 24-10, unfortunately.
Right. So, yeah, I guess as we talked about earlier, I've got like the X-Men rose-colored glasses on, Cyclops style,
Gambit
but,
style.
So I have the Packers win, but I have it as a low-scoring affair. Packers winning 17-13. I don't think Tampa's going to be able to score very much. They ended up beating New Orleans. What was it, 20-10? Last week, but as you said, it was 3-3
after 3 quarters.
After 3 quarters, their offense was not able to do anything until they were gifted a pick.
Yeah,
Jameis gave them a pick 6 and 2 other interceptions.
So the Packers can't beat themselves like the Saints did if they want to win this game.
Right.
They can't do it.
They've got to protect the ball, no turnovers, and do kind of just enough to get a few points. But I don't think Tampa's offense is not scary right now.
The Packers have to. The other thing that I forgot to mention: the Packers have to clean up the tackling. The tackling last year, they were the best tackling team in the league. This year has been very subpar.
That's been their biggest issue actually so far on for the run defense.
Yeah, Campbell has been missing tackles that he made last year, and we're going to need him to make them because we need him to. We need him to play well.
As I recall, when coming out of college for the draft, that Quay was actually a very good tackler.
Yeah, he had like the lowest missed tackle rate in the country or something like that.
So I think some of this is.
They're getting up to speed. They're only 2 weeks in.
Getting up to speed with they
live tackling.
They played preseason game 4.
Yep.
In week 1, and then their first game last week.
Yeah, and they're going to need to clean it up because, like we said, they're going to go for Yak with Lenny, and I think if they can't tackle, that's going to be very disgusting. Yeah, it's a big man.
Yeah.
I remember how big he looked at LSU playing against those college guys. That was frightening. But anyway, that has been our preview for Packers Buccaneers coming this Sunday. We will be doing a post-game Sunday night that will be brought to you on all your podcast platforms, so check that out, either Sunday night, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, whenever. We record every Thursday and every Sunday. Come check us out. We would appreciate it. Come follow us on Twitter at FatherSonPacker. Come subscribe to us on YouTube, Father Son Packers Podcast. Dad, you got anything for good listeners at home?
Pray for the hamstrings.
Knock on wood. Pray for everything. Pray for all the joints. Pray for all the muscles. Yeah, it's going to be hot in Florida almost certainly.
It's going to be Florida. I mean, this early season games in Florida. That's always one of the issues.
Yeah,
hot and humid.
But anyway, that does it for us today. And one last time, go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.